Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna. Are devotees present?
Yes, Prabhuji.
May I request, if possible, can you switch on your cameras? Let's begin with an invocation prayer. Kanchanvan Gaurangi Mataji, can you lead us in invocation, please?
ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitanscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate गोपेश गोपिकान्त श्री राधा कान्त नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, quick recap of yesterday's session. What did we discuss? We completed chapter 2 yesterday. Some quick reflections or points from our yesterday's discussion. Can you please share one point? Anything that you remember?
Can I say, Prabhuji?
Yes, please.
Prabhuji, in yesterday's session, we were discussing about the different characteristics or symptoms of a person who is Theta Pragya. So in the beginning, we discussed on this section, in the beginning, we discussed how this portion at all, why Arjuna is asking this. So because it comes in from verse 53, like a person who is like situated in a trance of self-realization. So naturally the question, a follow-up question Arjuna need to ask, like how we can identify a person who is actually situated in trance. So he's asked the question about the 4 point, about the characteristically, what are the symptoms, how does he speak, how does he sit, and how does he walk. So now you explained about speak, sit, and walk. What is
That's it, Prabhu. Just one point. Okay. Thank you, Gaurav Prabhu. And yes, others. Yes, Kanchan Garangi Mataji.
Then next, Prabhuji, we discussed at the end 8 steps of fall down, the Dhyayatu Vishayan Pumsa, and how it all begins by Dhyayatu contemplation. Then after that, attachment, and after attachment, lust manifests, and because of lust, anger comes. By anger, illusion comes. By illusion, the memory is bewildered, and then intelligence is lost. And finally, when intelligence is lost, there is again fall down into the material world.
Yeah, it starts at Dhyayatu and then ultimately Shati. Yes, thank you. Okay, what were some of other points? Yes, Anandita Mataji.
Hi Krishna, Pranam Prabhuji. Prabhuji, chapter 2 का verse 7 में अर्जुन बहुत ज्यादा bewildered हो जाते हैं पांचों reason देने के बाद. Then he takes shelter of Krishna. He surrenders unto him. Then Krishna starts from analytical study, and then karma yoga, Krishna buddhi yoga, work in Krishna consciousness, and then he explains Sthit Pragya and the causes of fall down. This way the chapter flows.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, other devotees would like to contribute. Shruti Priya Radharani Mataji, can you share one point? Are you there, Shruti Priya Radharani Mataji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Pranam. Sorry, I'm a little out of context right now, and Just joined a bit late.
Any point that you remember from chapter 2?
From chapter 2, benefits, Krishna discusses the benefits of doing Nishkam Karma Yoga. In 2.50 to 2.51 tells that you will be free from all the good and bad reactions, and in 2.51 tells Jan Mukta Vinamuktam, something like that, and that you will be free from the cycle of birth and death and achieve the ultimate destination.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Madhuri. Jonika Gumbar Madhuri. Any 1 point? Any reflections?
हाय कृष्णा प्रभु जी, मैंने हाफ क्लास मिस कर दी थी, तो आई एम रियली सॉरी प्रभु जी. लास्ट क्लास में थोड़ा लेट ज्वाइन किया था मैंने. हाय कृष्णा, कैन यू हियर मी प्रभु जी?
Yeah.
I really apologize and I will re-listen the last class audio.
Okay. Divya Leela Keshvi Madhuri.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Pranam. For first question, what are the symptoms? What are the symptoms of who is conscious and who is martial transcendent? For first question, Krishna is answering when a man gives up all varieties of desires from sense gratification, so it will arise from this mental concoction. Then he get purified. Krishna is answering, and he will be satisfied in self alone. And for second question, how does he speak? For that, Krishna has answered four answers, different answers Krishna has given. Symptoms, he is not disturbed by threefold miseries. And the second one, he is not attached for fear or anger, and he is unattached for good or evil. And the last, Krishna is saying, he will neither praise nor despise it. So he's perfect. This type of person will perfectly fit in the knowledge samadhi.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, so let me share to the screen. Just give me 1 moment. Okay, so we all know that Arjuna gave 5 reasons for not fighting, and the first one was compassion, then fear of sinful reaction, third was enjoyment, fourth was destruction of dynasty, and fifth was indecision, right? These were the 5 reasons that Arjuna gave. And by one, Lord Krishna is answering each of Arjuna's concern. So regarding the first point of compassion, what exactly Krishna spoke? He gave the knowledge of soul, Sankhya, right? How the compassion has to be placed in the right direction. Compassion, not just for the body, but for the soul. First of all, knowing who I am, right? So therefore, from verse 2.11 to 2.30, Lord Krishna spoke about the knowledge of the soul. Then what was Arjuna's another reason? About enjoyment. So Lord Krishna says, you can actually enjoy by following your Kshatriya dharma, and that is why he spoke from verse 2.31 to 37 about Kshatriya dharma. He says, even if you die while fighting this battle, you'll go to heavenly planet. That's the destination of any Kshatriya who dies in the battlefield while executing his duty. And even if you win the war, you'll get a kingdom on this earth. So it is not by giving up your duty, but rather by following your duty that enjoyment comes. Now, Arjuna's another concern was about fear of sinful reaction. And therefore, Lord Krishna spoke about Nishkama Karma Yoga. He was worried that war is such a ghastly act, and specifically fighting against one's own superiors will lead to sinful reaction. And Krishna explains the art of doing work through which one is not entangled in sinful reaction. And therefore, Lord Krishna spoke about the difference between a normal karma and a karma yoga. A karma which is based upon selfish desire can generate good or bad results, and to enjoy which one has to accept another body. But he emphasized it is not just the act, but it is the consciousness or the motivation, buddhi yoga, through which that act is performed, which determines the reaction of that action. So if you perform your act or your dharma of fighting in right consciousness, there will be no sinful reaction. So that is why we spoke about Buddhi Yoga, Nishkam Karma Yoga from verse 2.38 to 53. Right? So, and we also had a look we also discussed the 4 questions that Arjuna asked. What were those 4 questions? What are the general symptoms of a person who's situated in Sthita Pragya, Samadhi? How does he speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? And the deeper meaning of those questions and Lord Krishna's reply to each of that question. So this much ground we covered in chapter 2. Are there any questions related to whatever discussions we had up to this point?
I have one question in verse 51, the last line in the purport.
Okay. Yes, please speak. Okay. Can you please read out till the time I'm taking it?
Yeah, just
Service for the cause of the Lord is called Karma Yoga or Buddhi Yoga, or in plain word, devotional service to the Lord.
yes, Prabhuji. So what is confusing to me is that how if one is performing any action for the service of the Lord, so it's both Karma Yoga and Buddhi Yoga. So what exactly the difference between both yogas?
So in this context, they are the same. They can be interchanged with each other. Buddhi Yoga, specifically here when Lord Krishna is speaking about Buddhi Yoga, is referring to Karma Yoga. So there's no difference. And while Srila Prabhupada writing the purport, he is equating that Karma Yoga with devotional service to the Lord. So yeah.
Are there any reactions in Karma Yoga?
No, there are no reactions. That is a whole art of doing a work in such a way. If a person is working in knowledge and detachment and giving up the results for the transcendental cause, there are no reactions.
Then
And that-
how exactly Bhakti Yoga differs from Karma Yoga?
So yes, what is the difference between Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga? So the difference is, first of all, in Karma Yoga, one is giving up the results of one's action for a transcendental cause. But a person just on a platform of Karma Yoga need not be following the process of devotional service. There is no Panchang Bhakti going on. There is no Navda Bhakti going on. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Madanam, Rasam, Sakti. So one goes to a job, earns some money, take a portion, and give it to Krishna. That's Karma Yoga. But if the same person is following every day the process of devotional service, they are engaged into Shravanam, Kirtanam, and they are cultivating their own relationship with Krishna, then that comes under the purview of Bhakti. So more discussions about specifically in that interconnection between Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and their differences will come in upcoming chapters. So technically, many commentators, if you go it academically, there are differences between Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. However, Srila Prabhupada, that's the greatness of Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, he's translating each verse from the viewpoint of a Bhakti, and because he knows the essence, his books and purports are in such a way that you need not reach chapter 18 to come to the conclusion of Bhakti. That's the final instruction of the Lord. He's speaking about Bhakti. Even if any new person opens Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, just read the chapter 2. Still, he'll go away understanding the essence of Krishna's instruction is surrender unto him, right?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. I have never heard such simple explanations to this. It's always confusing to me.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's very nice explanation.
So yoga means we are connecting to Krishna. So for example, the title of the first chapter is Arjun Vishad Yoga. So lamentation also are of various types. There is one lamentation which takes one down in life. But here, Arjuna's lamentation is termed as yoga. He is using that lamentation to connect to Krishna. That connection is there, right? So you'll see the title of each chapter is in terms of yoga. So they are the different steps on the same ladder. Ultimately, they are connecting to Krishna. However, there are certain differences, and various differences will come to. It's like the different stages of reaching one's goal. It's like step 1, step 2, step 3. But ultimately, because they're connected with Krishna, it's called yoga. So Srila Prabhupada is having every opportunity to introduce Bhakti. Yeah. Okay. Any other question? Any other devotee? Any point that is not clear, or any other thing that you want to bring it up before we move to chapter 3?
Prabhuji, what is that? We heard Karma Kanda, Karma Yoga. So what is the difference between this?
So Karma Kand and Karma Yoga. So the difference is, okay, this gives us a very wonderful entry into chapter 3. We'll discuss that in detail. It's coming up. Okay, we'll take that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Prabhuji, I could not understand, Arjuna asked that how a self-realized person sits, walks like that. And Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains it in more deeper way, broader way, that how does he react or did not respond like that. So how should I cannot understand the link between, Arjuna is asking and Krishna is replying. That's little still it's confusing to me.
So are you asking the relationship between Arjuna's question and Krishna's answer, or are you wanting to ask the meaning of Arjuna's question?
No. Yeah, I'm asking the link between Arjuna's questions and Krishna's answers.
Okay, so in a nutshell, first question of Arjun was, what are the symptoms of a person who is self-realized soul, Jivan Mukta, or who is in Samadhi or in divine consciousness? Okay. So Krishna's reply was, what are the general symptoms? First symptom is he gives up all sorts of material desire. Material desires are created out of mind. They are a concoction of the mind. And second symptom is those souls are satisfied in transcendence, in the self. They don't take shelter of material energy for their satisfaction. So such a soul is said to be Sthit Pragya in pure consciousness. That are general symptoms. He asked about symptoms, and that's how Krishna is defining those symptoms. What are those symptoms? They give up material desires, which are born out of mental concoction. And second, they are situated, they're satisfied. The source of their happiness and satisfaction is the self. They are not dependent upon external energy. Then the second question of Arjuna was, how do they speak? Meaning, how do they respond to the dualities of this world? Speak in terms of how they speak externally and how do they speak internally. And what was Krishna's response? How do they respond? Speak means how, when they are facing the dualities of this world, different situations of this world, how are they responding to it? So how are they responding? They are not disturbed in mind. That's their first response. They are not elated in happiness. They are free from attachment, fear, and anger. They have a very steady mind. They are unaffected with the changing circumstances, and whatever situation they are receiving in life, someday they're receiving a lot of praise, and someday they are receiving a lot of criticism. But they are unaffected by it. They don't praise a favorable situation, or they don't despise an unfavorable situation. That is their response to duality. Arjuna's third question was, how do they sit? That means, how do they withdraw their senses? How do they control their senses? And Lord Krishna gives an example of tortoise. They give an example. And how are they able to do that? Because by param drishta nivartate, by experiencing a higher taste. So, and then Lord Krishna speaks about, how even a person of knowledge can be distracted by temptation of the senses. And therefore the true sense control is possible only in relationship with Krishna, Matpara. And therefore Krishna described the 8 stages of fall down in that context. And finally, in the last question, how do they walk? Means, how do they engage their senses? And therefore Lord Krishna is explaining, they engage their senses through when they are free from rag and dvesh, then they can engage their senses with a controlled mind in a regulative way. Right? We read the term regulative principles of freedom. And therefore Lord Krishna explained in that context why it is important to control the senses. Because till the time one controls the senses, there is no possibility of a steady mind. If a mind is not steady, if there is no peace, there is no question of happiness. And the agitated senses can carry away one's intelligence. And so, is it clear?
Yeah. Yes, pretty clear. Thank you. रानू मैं भोग लगा रही हूँ, तुम दूध ले लो 15-20 मिनट।
Let us begin with the chapter 3.
फ्रिज में रख दिया मैं तो आई हूँ।
Arjun Vacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyojyasi Keshava. I think it's given in a different way here. Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyojyasi Keshava. Okay, so after hearing the responses of Lord Krishna, Arjuna is asking a question. Says, "O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work?" So, why is Arjuna asking this question now? Can someone explain? So Lord Krishna has just outlined the principles of Buddhi Yoga, and he has answered the 4 questions of Arjuna in terms of a Sthit Pragya. After hearing those explanations, Arjuna is still confused. And you will see this confusion multiple times, the exactly same confusion. He's asking in the beginning of chapter 2, he's asking the same question in chapter 3, and he'll be again and again asking this particular question. So, why exactly, even after Lord Krishna has explained the principles of karma? Yes, Shruti Priya Mother.
Prabhuji, in one
Yes, unmute yourself, Mother, please speak. I see your
in
hand.
one verse, I think 2.48, Krishna says, Turen he varam karma, to keep all the abominable activities away. So maybe that could be the cause of Arjuna's confusion.
Sorry, say again. What is the cause of Arjuna's confusion?
In one verse, 2.48, I think, Lord says that Durene varam karma, that keep all the abominable activities away. So that could be one reason that Arjuna is thinking that Lord wants, whether he wants me to actually fight or keep away from this ghastly warfare.
Okay. Yes, absolutely right. Others I would like to add into it. Yes, Kanchan Manmataji.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, now Arjuna must be thinking that Krishna has explained Buddhi Yoga. That ultimately Krishna has emphasized, like 61, Krishna says mat para, word also uses like directly into me. So now Arjuna must be thinking, saying that, okay, Krishna, now we understand that devotional service is the best. So why do you want to engage me in this? Like, let me remain in Krishna consciousness. If it is the best, if I've got the right intelligence, then why to engage in this? Like, what are the benefits of those sakam?
Okay. So let us look at a particular verse where Lord Krishna was about to begin his teachings. So this is verse 39. And in this verse, Lord Krishna is speaking, Esha te bihita sankhya buddhi yoge vimam shrinu. Buddhaya yukta jaya partha karma bandham prahasasi. Sorry, not this verse. It's the verse where Lord Krishna is saying, keep the abominable actions. Yes, 49. Yes, Madhurya. Durena hi avaram karma. Buddhi yoga dhananjaya. Buddhau sharanam anvicha kripanaha palahetava. So Lord Krishna is speaking, Durena hi avaram karma. On one side, Lord Krishna is saying, keep the abominable activities durena, distant. And Buddhi Yoga Dhananjaya. And he's recommending the Buddhi Yoga. But somehow, Arjun, after hearing this verse, is thinking, Lord Krishna is recommending Buddhi. Buddhi is interpreting as Jnana. And he's telling me to keep the abominable actions away. And what could be a more abominable action than engaging in a war? So on one side, he understood Lord Krishna's instruction that he's telling me to keep war away, to keep avaram karma, durena. And he's recommending buddhi, and he's interpreting buddhi as jnana, or cultivation of knowledge. However, he is also simultaneously telling me to engage in war. And therefore, he's confused. If Krishna is regarding buddhi as superior to karma, action, then why does he urging Arjuna to engage in the action of this extreme kind? So now this Arjuna, through this question, is highlighting one of the most prominent confusion in the minds of people. And that is, many times people think engagement in worldly action is in opposition to spiritual realization. There are various religious traditions who believes that you cannot get spiritual realization until and unless you take sannyas. So first step, first qualification is you have to give up everything. And then only you can be eligible for any sort of spiritual advancement or realization. But the version of Bhagavad Gita is very different in this regard. So let us read the purport. It's a very interesting purport. Anyone who has not read at all in all these days can Pushchi and Sanyam, can you read? Pushchi and Sanyam Malik, can you please read the purport? Are you there? Uday Balaram Prabhu, can you read?
Sure, Prabhu. O Janardana, O Keshwa, why do you want to engage me in the ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruity works? The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitutions of the soul in the previous chapter with a view of delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grave and the path of realization has been recommended Buddhi Yoga or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood by the inertia, and one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to the schedule. Place to become fully Krishna conscious by the chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in the schedule, in the secluded place where one may acquire only cheap adoptions from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness of Buddhi Yoga or intelligence in the spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at the secluded place in order world. Can you please down the screen? Hare Krishna. Thank you. Chief absorption from the consciousness of Buddhi Yoga or intelligence in the spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from the active life and the practice of penance and austerity at the secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoiding the fighting by the using Krishna consciousness as an excuse, but as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master, questions Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained Karma Yoga or work in Krishna consciousness in the 3rd chapter, Surrender unto Me.
Yes, one of the very common confusion that on the pretext of one's executing spiritual life, one tends to give up one's duties, and that is also labeled as escapism. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia. And today specifically, as we are observing the disappearance day of Srila Haridas Thakur and how Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj again and again emphasized that one cannot artificially imitate Srila Haridas Thakur to give up everything in order to chant holy names of Krishna in a secluded place. And he exposed again and again the subtle desire for cheap adoration from the innocent public. So Arjuna similarly thought Buddhi Yoga means to take retirement from active life. But he is putting the question in front of Krishna. So verse 2. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. Yes.
In the previous chapter, as we preclude to the Bhagavad Gita, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, control of the sense by intelligence, work without fruitive desire, and the position of the neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path will be necessary for the action and understanding. Arjuna, therefore, wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any jugglery of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness, either by inertia or by active service. In other words, by his questions, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all.
Okay. Is it clear the exact confusion of Arjuna till this point? Any questions related to this? Because our whole chapter is then based upon this particular question of Arjuna. So in the chat section, I am reading, is there any difference in Bhakti Yoga and Buddhi Yoga, or are they same? So Buddhi Yoga is interpreted differently in different places. At this junction, in this particular chapter, Buddhi Yoga means Nishkama Karma Yoga. It is synonymous specifically with Nishkama Karma Yoga. However, at other places, Buddhi Yoga is also translated as Bhakti Yoga. Just like Nishkama Karma Yoga, Srila Prabhupada is also equating it with Krishna consciousness. Technically, Buddhi Yoga is more towards side of Nishkama Karma Yoga. However, it can also be interpreted as Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga. And Srila Prabhupada does that at various places. Okay. So why Arjuna is asking this question and the meaning of Arjuna's query? Is it clear to everyone? So now Lord Krishna replies to that query. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Lokesmin vividhanischa pura prokta maya nagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. Says Lokesmin vividhanischa. So there are two kinds of nischa. Dvi vidhanischa. What are they? Pura prokta maya nagha. Pura means just now. Previously, prokta. I said I told you about this Mayanaga, who is free from sin. So what are those two categories of people, specifically on the basis of Nishtha or one's faith? First is Gyan Yogena Sankhyanam. One category, one transcendentalist, their Nishtha is the word Gyan Yogena Sankhyanam. And the other category is Karma Yogena Yoginam. So only similar assertion, I have already explained there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation and others by devotional service. So see, here although the word is Karma Yogena, Srila Prabhupada is specifically translating it as devotional service. In the second chapter, verse 39, that is the glory of Srila Prabhupada. His title was Bhakti Vedanta, which means he can translate any verse of Vedanta or Vedic scriptures from a viewpoint of Bhakti. And once one person came to Srila Prabhupada and he asked him, Srila Prabhupada, in a places like this where it is written as Karma Yoga, you are translating as Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, that is my credit. My purports, no one can screw out any other thing from my purports except Bhakti. You know, there are so many scholars, so-called scholars and people who misinterpret Bhagavad Gita to propagate their own viewpoints or to propagate the viewpoints of karma and jnana. But Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, no one can misunderstand the real intention of Krishna, that is of bhakti, after reading my purpose. Hare Krishna, is my voice clear? I see the screen frozen in front of me. Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Yes,
we are-
Guruji.
Okay, okay. Thank you. So in second chapter, verse 39, Lord explained two kinds of procedures, namely Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga or Buddhi Yoga. So in this verse, Lord explains the same more clearly. Right? So let's go to the next verse. So now, from starting from verse 3 to verse 8, Lord Krishna is specifically explaining about what exactly is renunciation. So Arjuna's question was about the basic query was, should I act, should I renounce? Right? That's the gist of his query. Do I perform action Do I take sannyas? Do I give up action? Do I take renunciation? So first of all, Lord Krishna is elaborating the meaning of real renunciation in these verses. And what are they? Um, I would request Govind Madhav Prabhu, can you please read the translation from verse 3 to verse 9 or verse 4 to verse 9? We already covered 3.
क्या बोलो?
Yes, please.
Not by merely abstaining from work, one can achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection.
So also chant the Sanskrit verses and then.
Nahi kashit shanamapi jatu tishtati akarma krit karyate hi avasha karma sarva prakriti jair guna. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. Karmendriyani samyamya ya aste manasa smaran indriyartham vimudhatma mithya charasa uchyate mithya achara sa uchyate. One who restrains the senses of action but whose mind dwells on sense objects certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Yasta indriyani manasa niyamyara bharte arjuna karmendriya indriya karma yogam astasa visasyate. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Niyatam kuru karma tam karma jayo he akarmana sarira yatra pichate na prasidiyad akarmana. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Yajnarthat karma.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhu. So yes, what is the crux of these verses? What exactly is renunciation? That Krishna is explaining. That renunciation just doesn't mean to give up action. It is a state of mind. It is a consciousness. Why? If we see in verse number 4. So, first of all, Arjuna is inclined towards the path of renunciation, and Krishna is explaining that he is discouraging a premature renunciation. And he's explaining not by just giving up one's karma, one's prescribed action, one can achieve perfection or freedom. And not by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. So it is not that if you don't perform your actions, you will be free from reaction. No, it doesn't work like that. Why it doesn't work like that? In the next verse, Krishna says, because everyone is forced to act helplessly according to modes of nature. So action is performed by body, mind, and speech. So even if you are giving up your prescribed action, but the modes of nature will ensure that you remain active. It is and therefore Prabhupada is writing, it is not a question of embodied life, but it is the nature of the soul to be always active. Without the presence of spirit soul, the material body cannot move. So it is not that you can just give up work and remain inert. It's not possible. You'll have to work. And therefore, just a second, it's a very important point here. And therefore, Krishna is now comparing a person who has prematurely given up one's prescribed duty versus someone who is rightly situated but performing his duty. So, important verse, this verse 6, Karma Indriyani Sanyamya. So, Karma Indriyani, what are the Karma Indriyas? The 5 working senses. Sanyamya, although one may control those. Yaste manasasmaran. But even if you give up your prescribed action externally, until and unless there's purification of heart, what will the mind dwell upon? Mind will dwell upon the sense objects. Indriyarthan vimudatma mithyachara sa uchyate. And such a person who is artificially giving up one's prescribed action, but internally they are focusing on sense objects, that person is called as mithyachara, a pretender. And is giving a contrast. On the other hand, if a person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga without attachment, is by far superior. So if we read the previous purport, Priyanka Uniyal Mataji, can you read the purport to verse 6, please?
Prabhuji, I'm on the way actually. I'm
Okay.
going back to my home, so I cannot read that.
Okay. Vivek Prabhu. You're on mute. If you can unmute yourself, that's great.
There are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness, but make a show of meditation while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers, but according to this verse, these are the greatest cheaters. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order. But if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. But he who makes a show of being a yogi while actually searching for the objects of sense gratification must be called the greatest cheater. Even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy, his knowledge has no value, because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusionary energy of the Lord. Such pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever.
So, verse 6, it clearly refers to one who renounced the world physically, but they have a lot of material desires. That person is said to be a pretender. Whereas in the next verse, which is referring to someone who is very active within the world, but does not seek to enjoy the objects of senses. So once again, stating that actual renunciation is a state of mind. It's consciousness. Simply, if someone is executing a work or they are giving up work, that doesn't define renunciation. What actually defines renunciation is one's consciousness. They are really detached from sense material desires. And therefore, in verse 8, Lord Krishna is recommending clearly to Arjuna, the path of Nishkama Karma Yoga is better for you, is safer for you. Perform your prescribed duties for doing is better than not working. So your question was, should I act or should I renounce? Krishna is saying, you should act. It's better for you. One cannot maintain one's physical body without work. Now, someone can ask, but what happens to those persons who are attached to the result of one's work? You are asking me to work in Nishkam Karma way, but I want to enjoy the results. But what happens to someone who cannot begin at this level? So what hope is there for such persons? And therefore, from actually from verse 10 onwards, here one can ask, if someone is performing actions, one may become bound up by those activities. But Krishna is saying, no, you will not become bound up by those activities if you act in this way. Yajna karmanonyatra loko yam karma bandhana loko yam tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. So since you will anyway be engaged in the work, the soul is always active. It's not possible to artificially give up one's work, but there is certain art. If you act in such a way, you will not be bound by the reaction. And what is that art? Yagyat karmanonyatra loko yam karma bandhana. So yagyartha means to do the work as yagya. Yagya means for the sake of Lord Vishnu. Any work that is performed in this way will not bound you to the reactions. But apart from this, all kinds of work will generate some sort of reactions and you will be implicated in them. Therefore, you perform your work as a sacrifice, as a yajna. Otherwise, work will cause bondage to this world. Right? So now, at this point, one can say, if someone is not free from desire for the results of action, then what should one do? Lord Krishna is saying, you still perform the karma. You want to fulfill your desires, do it in a dharmic way. How? By the karma kand process. So rather than giving up the action completely, you still do the action, but do it in a way that is prescribed in Vedas. So if you cannot perform karma yoga, start with karma kand, and gradually you will be elevated to karma yoga. So what is karma kand? Lord Krishna describes in verse 10 onwards. So someone has material desires, they want to fulfill those material desires. Krishna says, yes, please do that, but do it with the right process. And what exactly is that right process? Krishna explains in this verses. Okay. Jayadvait Prabhu, can you please read verse 10 onwards?
Sure, Prabhu.
Maybe from verse 10 to 13, if you can recite and
Okay.
read the.
Sure. Sahayagya prajaya shrashtva purovacha prajapati anena prasavisyadvam esavo astva istakamaduk. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." Deva bhavaya tanena te deva bhavayantu va parasparam bhavayanta shreya param avapasyatha. The demigod, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus by cooperation. Sorry, Prabhu, I'm just opening up. And thus, by cooperation between men and demigod, prosperity will reign for all. Istan bhoga hi vo deva dasyante yagya bhavita datan apradayabhyo yo bhunkte stena evasa. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Yagyashishtasina santo muchyante sarva kilbise bhunjate te tu agam papa ye pachanti atma karanat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin.
Thank you, Prabhu. So, starting from verse 10, Lord Krishna is explaining how can be one happy materially within this world? By the performance of sacrifice. The principle of sacrifice, especially in the Karma Kand section, if you have any certain desires, there are specific sacrifices which are prescribed. You execute those sacrifices, you get the result, and in the process, you remain materially happy. At the same time, you will be purified and ultimately achieve liberation. And verse 11, Lord Krishna is speaking about the interdependency of humanity and the demigods. So in any sacrifice, the offering is made to the demigods. The demigods get their share of offering, and as a reciprocation, they bestow all necessities to the performer of sacrifice. So by mutual cooperation, prosperity happens everywhere. On the other hand, if someone enjoys the gifts of one's life without offering them to the demigods in return is called a thief. And in verse 13, Srila Prabhupada quoted this verse at many places, saying, Yagya Shashchina Santo Uchyante Sarva Kilvisha. So the remnants of Yagya, which are considered as prasad. So the devotees of the Lord, how do they take food? They prepare the food for the sacrifice, for the satisfaction of the Lord, and therefore they become free from all kinds of sin after consuming that food, because it is first of all offered in sacrifice. On the other hand, if someone prepares food for personal sense enjoyment, Lord Krishna says that person eats only sin. So quite heavy language. Krishna is making it very clear in the verse 12 and 13. He's thoroughly condemning self-centered life, saying if you are enjoying gifts without any kind of giving, you're just taking, and there's no giving involved in the process, you'll not be happy, and you'll be considered as thief. And everyone has to sustain for their own maintenance, has to eat food. But devotees, they are not implicated by that kind of food because they take it as a prasad of the Lord. Now, in next two verses, 14th and 15th, Lord Krishna describes the entire cycle of sacrifice. So let us go through verse 14 and 15. Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyadanna sambhava yagyad bhavati parjanyo yagyaha karma samudbhava. So annad bhavanti bhutani. Bhutani means the bodies of all living entities. How are they maintained? On anna. But how does this anna come? Parjanyat anna sambhava. This an comes from rain. So first step is grains, but the grain comes from rain. How does the rain comes? Yagyat bhavati parjanyo. The rains come from yagya. How is yagya done? And yagyat karma samudbhava, by performance of prescribed duties. In the next verse, Lord Krishna says, karma brahmodbhavam vidhi. Now this is very interesting. In the next part, so we discussed that for material bodies to sustain, they need anna. Anna comes from rain. Rain comes from sacrifice. Sacrifice is born of prescribed duties. But now these prescribed duties, who recommends these prescribed duties? Brahmodbhavam vidhi. The Vedas, Brahma means Vedas. So these prescribed duties comes from Vedas, Brahma. And Brahmakshara samudbhavam. And Vedas come from whom? Vedakshara, the supreme Brahman. That means the personality of Godhead. Samudbhavam, they manifest from Krishna. And Tasmat, that means therefore, Sarvagatam Brahma. That Supreme Lord is manifested everywhere. Brahma is manifested everywhere. Nityam yagya pratishchitam. And is Nityam, is eternally present, pratishtam, in all sacrifices. Regulative activities are prescribed in the Vedas. Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in the acts of sacrifice. Right? So this was the cycle of sacrifice. From Supreme Lord comes the Vedas. From Vedas come the prescribed action, karma. From prescribed action, yajna is performed. From yajna comes rain. From rain comes food grains. And from food grains, the material bodies of all living entities are maintained. And when those living entities offer food again to Supreme Lord, Akshara, then the cycle is complete. However, if someone is not completing this cycle or breaking this cycle anywhere, what happens? Evam pravartitam chakram. This pravartitam chakram, this entire chakra is established by Vedas. But if someone nanu vartayati ha iha, na, if someone doesn't do it, anuvartayati, one doesn't follow this cycle or adopt this cycle, what happens? Aghayur indriyaramo. Aghayu means he's implicated in sinful life. Indriya aramaha. Indriya arama means for sense gratification. Mogham partha sajivati. And such a person leads one life in vain only. So my dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice, thus established by the Vedas, certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of senses, such a person lives in vain. So Lord Krishna is comparing, if someone cannot do Nishkam Karma Yoga, start with Karma Kand. And if someone doesn't even follow the Karma Kand and doesn't abide by this cycle of sacrifice, is saying the life of such a person just goes in vain. Okay, Dayan with Bhakti Mataji, can you please read the purport? Dayan with Bhakti Mataji, are you there? Aradhya Gadadhar Prabhu, can you read?
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Purport. The Mamonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification is condemned herein by the Lord. Therefore, for those who want to enjoy this material world, the above mentioned cycle of performing yajnas is absolutely necessary. One who does not follow such regulations is living a very risky life, being condemned more and more. By nature's law, this human form of life is specifically meant for self-realization in either of the three ways, namely Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga. There is no necessity of rigidly following the performances of the prescribed yajnas for the transcendentalists who are above vice and virtue. But those who are engaged in sense gratification require purification by the above mentioned cycle of yajna performances. There are different kinds of activities. Those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness. Therefore, they need to execute pious work. The yajna system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious persons may satisfy their desires without becoming entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work. The prosperity of the world depends not on our efforts, not on our own efforts, but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, directly carried out by the demigods. Therefore, the yajnas are directly aimed at the particular demigods mentioned in the Vedas. Indirectly, it is a practice of Krishna consciousness because when one masters the performance of yajnas, one is sure to become Krishna conscious. But if by performing yajnas, one does not become Krishna conscious, such principles are counted as only moral codes. One should not, therefore, limit his progress only to the point of moral codes, but should transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness. Surrender unto me.
So he's condemning the life of Srila Prabhupada uses the word Mamonist philosophy. Work very hard and enjoy the sense gratification. Krishna is saying, sorry. So Krishna is saying, such a life is a wasted life. Just a life meant only for sense pleasure. And yajna are absolute necessity. It is important to be materially happy. It helps in spiritual elevation, and it gradually purifies one and bring that person ultimately to the level of Krishna consciousness. And it is it is a prescribed way of becoming happy in this world, and especially in human form of life. Now, but someone can think, if my prescribed duties are meant to bring material reward, but I do not have any material desire in this life, and I don't even need Swargloka. I know I'm not in this body. So why should I perform my prescribed duties at all? And therefore, in next verses, Lord Krishna will start describing how even a person who is free from the desire of enjoying any sort of result, even that person should perform prescribed duties just to set the right example in society. Okay. So I will stop here for the time being, and we'll discuss if there are any doubts or questions for whatever part we covered today.
Guruji, in the last verse, the prosperity of the world depends not on our efforts, but on the background arrangement directly by demigods. Can you please elaborate or explain this?
So yes, how is the person purified? By following the Karmakand section of Vedas. See, what is happening in the process, by default, number one, this person is admitting that I am not a completely independent person. If I want my desires to be fulfilled, I am dependent upon someone. If they're following sacrifice, they are showing, that's a very wonderful starting point. They're showing their dependence upon higher beings in this world, the demigods. I cannot independently fulfill my desire. I'm dependent upon someone. And secondly, when they perform that sacrifice, because every mantra begins with Om, and in some mantras there are chant names or different names of Vishnu. So just by chanting those names, one is gradually purified. So that is why Srila Prabhupada writes, one is not independently. Everything depends upon the Supreme Lord. Okay. Yes, Vidyavati Madhuri.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you for the explanation. Prabhuji, in this, the last thing that you mentioned, that even if a person is free from any kind of desire, should do his prescribed work to set a right example in the society. So Prabhuji, in our lives, like as a grihastha, there are a lot of things to be done. So how do we understand that what all things need to be done to set a right example? Like, for example, going to the social gatherings and like dressing up according to them. We don't have the desire to waste our time in going in social gatherings and different kinds of parties and occasions and festivals and rituals at home. But if we don't participate in all of them properly, then our family members and extended family members, they feel that people getting into Krishna consciousness are becoming a cult, वो सिर्फ अपना ही करते हैं, they don't want to do other things, like वो मतलब we are not able to make them understand. So how to understand that, are we setting a right example, or like they are feeling that ISKCON is मतलब वो negative preaching लगती है कि they are on some points they we have a fight in our consciousness that should we be doing this or not, for setting a right example.
Yes, thank you. Very relevant, practical, excellent question, Mataji. Although we did not discuss this part, I just mentioned it for the transition to the next verses. We'll discuss this in elaborate details in upcoming verses, specifically in verse 17 onwards up to 35. So, first of all, we need to understand a person. This is being explained to a person who is free from any sort of desire to enjoy the results. That means they don't have any taste in material pleasure. They have no purpose or gain in performing such actions, and they have no reasons for not performing work too, both sides. And they are not dependent upon any other living being or demigods. So, for such self-realized persons, the examples will be given of Janak Maharaj, and Lord Krishna gives his own example also, that even if he has nothing to perform, he still performs. So that's the first thing. Second point is especially related to your question. It is more about a clarity of it. Actually, it is a more I think a question of how to balance various aspects of one's life, at the same time understanding what exactly is my prescribed duty. So we from the perspective of balancing our role, my role as a mother, my role as a wife, my role as a daughter, my role as a preacher in Krishna consciousness, or as a Bhakti Vriksha leader, or any community leader, how to balance out various roles appropriately. It's more a question of, those side. But here we are discussing about, initially, it can act as a lot of pressure in our own Krishna consciousness, that I am performing my devotional service not out of genuine love or not out of genuine spiritual endeavor, but my major motivation is that I have to be inspiring for others. I have to be inspiring for the devotees around me or the devotees in my Bhakti Vriksha. And if the motivation totally turns toward this side, it can be a very suffocating and a burdensome life. This is not recommended. Yes, I have to be inspiring, but in what way? First of all, I have to be, it has to begin from 100% honesty and integrity. Whether what exactly are my needs as an individual devotee, not just as a leader, but as an individual devotee, not just as a mother, not just as a daughter or in different roles, but me as a person, what do I need? It begins from there. So if I am attending to that particular need in sufficient amount, and I am very happily situated in my Krishna consciousness, then it will reflect in others' roles as well. And then if I'm honestly executing my Krishna consciousness from whatever level I am and handling whatever services I could in a balanced way and an effective way, then I can lead a very happy and balanced life. For example, we know there are some preachers who stay till late in the night and then wake up early in the morning in the initial Krishna consciousness years also, and taking on too many services even beyond what they can handle. How ultimately they break down after 3 years or 4 years, or different health challenges starts appearing in the lives of devotees just because of a unhealthy lifestyle. So there are various factors involved in it. I would suggest begin with your own personal need as an individual, your own Krishna consciousness. Take care of that, take care of your health, and then gradually it will, have to juggle between different roles. And we will discuss more and when we actually take up that section.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Does it help, or are you more confused now?
No, Prabhuji, yes, definitely it makes sense. A lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other question from the section we discussed? So this chapter 3 began with Arjuna's query. Arjuna is confused whether I should renounce or I should act and engage in war. And he's asking Krishna, is confused by verse 49 after hearing in that context, where Krishna is telling, better to keep abominable actions away from and take shelter of buddhi. So on one side, you're telling me to keep away abominable action. What can be more abominable action than war? And on another side, you are recommending buddhi yoga, and he's saying, translating buddhi yoga as renunciation, and therefore he's asking this question. And Srila Prabhupada is translating how using Krishna consciousness as an excuse, different individuals can give up their prescribed duties, which is not recommended, which can be unhealthy, to prematurely renounce. The result of that is, first of all, they will be pretender. At the same time, if the heart is not purified, they will strive to fulfill their material desires, but in illegitimate ways. So that was, in the first 2 verses, Arjuna puts forward this question, and Lord Krishna begins answering by, first of all, defining the renunciation. And he says there are 2 types of people. The persons who are cultivating knowledge, or the Sankhya Yoga towards renunciation side, and the Buddha Yoga practitioner, the Karma Yogis, based upon Nishcha, their faith. And in verse 4, Lord Krishna said that simply by giving up one's action, it is not that one can be purified. Simply by giving up actions, renunciation doesn't necessarily mean just giving up everything. It is actually a state of consciousness. Inaction is unnatural for an active spirit soul. Why? Because specifically, one is impelled by the 3 modes of nature to act. But then we see sometimes people give up actions who doesn't engage their senses. Sometimes they speak very big philosophies. What about them? So Krishna says, anyone who is prematurely renouncing one's prescribed actions, he is a mithyachari, he is a pretender, because although they may be restraining externally, but their mind is always meditating upon sense objects. Secretly in the heart, they are thinking how to gratify senses, while externally posing themselves as a big renunciants. So they are cheating no one else, but they are cheating themselves. In contrast to such sannyasis, a grihastha or a householder is better, who is performing a scriptural action without longing for to enjoy the results of those actions. So Lord Krishna is saying a sincere person who is actively trying to control the senses and is performing his prescribed duties, they are better than Mithyacharis. So therefore, Arjun, if you ask me this question, for you, I think the best and the safest path is you perform your prescribed duties. You perform your niyat karma in comparison to karma sannyas, renunciation of action. So when we say renunciation, renunciation is also, there are different types of karma and there can be different types of renunciation. In these contexts, renunciation specifically means karma sannyas. Karma sannyas means giving up one's prescribed duty. Prescribed duty means the duties related to varna and ashram, which are determined by shastra according to one's modes of nature. But then there are some nitya karma also. That is not recommended to give up nitya karma. Here, we are specifically speaking about the material duties of varna and ashram. So then Arjuna can ask, you are telling me to do my prescribed duty and you are telling me not to go towards renuncia, to renounce my action. But if I will do my duty, I may be implicated in my results. But Krishna says, no, there is an art of doing that work. What is that art? Yagyartha karmano niyat lokoyam karma bandhana tadar karta kaunteya. Tadartham karma kaunteya. That is the art. You do that karma for tadartham, not your artham, but tadartham, for his satisfaction. Whose satisfaction? Yagya, for the satisfaction of Vishnu. If you do that, what will happen? Mukta Sangha Samachara. You will always be mukta from the reactions. So, so Krishna says, if you act for the Lord as a sacrifice, that is the best path for you, Arjun, rather than prematurely renouncing your duty. So next, Krishna tells Arjuna, but if you are not on that level, if you are not free from the desire for the results of action, still perform the action as a karma kand. Rather than karma sannyas, go to the level of karma kand. What is that karma kand? And then Krishna describes the sacrifice, how one can be happy in this world by performance of yajna. So your karma is a kshatriya duty, do it as a sacrifice. Then he explains the interrelationship between human species and the demigods, how human species, they perform sacrifice, they please demigods, and demigods reciprocate with them, and there's prosperity for everyone. In the process, gradually, the performer is also purified. But someone who tries to enjoy without giving anything in return is a thief, and a thief can never be peaceful, a thief can never be happy. And then Lord Krishna specifically mentions about eating food that are offered in sacrifice, and he explains the cycle of sacrifice in verse 14 and 15. And what is that cycle? We have a material body. Material body is maintained by food grains. Food grains comes from rain. Rain comes from yajna. Yajna is performed as prescribed actions. Those prescribed actions are prescribed by Vedas. Vedas come from the Supreme Lord. So therefore, if living entities who are consuming food, they offer the food to the Supreme Lord, that cycle of sacrifice is complete. However, if someone is giving up this cycle, that person leads a life which is full of sin, and therefore Therefore, the sacrifices are so important. So from Karma Kand, one can elevate to Nishkama Karma Yoga. Okay. Yes, Vidyavati Mataji.
Like you mentioned that actions performed for fruitive results is karma kand. So like because we are not so much elevated and we have so much material or fruitive mentalities behind the service also which we perform, fame or something else. So that is definitely not a part kind of devotional service. So I've heard, and I just wanted to check my understanding. In one way, we are performing karma kand, and we are just getting some kind of sukriti if we are not performing bhakti with the right consciousness and performing it with a fruitive consciousness.
So, see, when we talk about bhakti, that arena is little different. So yes, there are different stages of bhakti. There can be karma mishra bhakti, there can be jnana mishra bhakti. So when one is executing the service, at the same time, they have desires for their own self. The desires may not be completely pure for the satisfaction of Krishna. So then our devotional service is contaminated by the desire of karma. But still it is counted as bhakti. Still the purification is there. It is better than giving up that act, or it is better than not performing that act for Krishna. So when Krishna is involved in the picture and we are associating with the devotees and there's a specific practice of devotional service that we're doing. So gradually by the performance of those sadhana, the heart is purified. So that is why Srila Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he mentions the 9 stages of devotional service. Adav Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya. So, and then the stage comes of Anartha Nivritti. So it depends how intensive is our bhajan. The stronger the bhajan is, faster the purification will be, and anartha, and then anartha vritti, and then ruchi, asakti, all the stages will come in our devotional life as well. So therefore, the solution is to focus on bhajan kriya. We can't focus on anartha nivritti or ruchi, asakti. Those are stages, they will manifest gradually with time. The only thing that we can actually do is focus on executing our bhajan with more sincerity and commitment. Is it okay, Vidyavati Mataji?
Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other question?
Prabhuji, in the purport of the last 16 verse, it was written, those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness. Therefore, they need to execute pious work. Was it you were talking about here? Krishna consciousness means karma yoga, and they execute pious work means karma kanda.
Verse number
16. In the purport of 16 verse, it is written, those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness. So here, thus Krishna consciousness means karma yoga. Therefore, they need to execute pious work. They are saying this pious work as karma kanda.
just a second. So the verse number 16, I'm reading. Which line in the verse are you referring?
Sixth.
is
One who does not.
those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness.
Yes, yes. Therefore, they need to execute pious work.
So here Krishna conscious means karma yoga and pious work means karma kanda. Is it right?
No. Krishna consciousness mean performing activity. See, Srila Prabhupada is very clearly translating Nishkama Karma Yoga as Krishna consciousness, working for Krishna. That is Krishna consciousness. If someone is not working for Krishna, they will be working for someone else. And what is that someone else? Their own senses. So if someone who's not working for Krishna, definitely they will be working for sense gratification. And now that sense gratification can be personal or can be extended. I may be working for myself or people connect in connection with this body. That means by the family, it can mean the society, it can mean the nation, but still it is on the level of bodily concept of life. That is why it is sensory consciousness. So, if someone is on that level and they do not know who is Krishna and they are not on that level, for them, even that starting point is start with yajna that are given in the Karma Kand section of Vedic scriptures. So therefore, they need to execute pious activities because this entire system of yajna is planned in such a way that those people can satisfy their own sense gratification. At the same time, they will be elevated. At the same time, there will be purification by the performance of those sacrifices. See, that is the all-inclusive nature of Krishna. Krishna is not rejecting someone. Okay, you are not a devotee, you are not on this path, and then I condemn you. It's not like that. He's always including all the different kinds of people on all the different kinds of level with all the different kinds of motivation. Okay, if you cannot do this, you can do this. You cannot do this, please begin here. She has given a system. If you follow that system, they'll be safe. They'll make advancement.
But Prabhuji, here also just, for example, in the last few lines it is written that if a person, even after performing this yajnas, he does not become Krishna conscious, then it remains, it is counted as only moral codes. So one should not limit his progress only to moral codes and transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness. So by doing this also, like, there is possibility that person will not become Krishna conscious. Like there's still this loophole.
Yes, there may be a possibility. It may take various lifetimes to come to that level. Yes, you are absolutely right. And at the same time, this is chapter 3. So if you will see in the further chapters, this is, we are at a certain stage in conversation of Krishna and Arjuna. This is not the complete conversation. By the time we complete the conversation, we'll see Krishna will tell, just forget whatever I told you in the previous day. This is what I want you to do. Yeah, he's saying Sarva Dharman Parityaja in the 18th chapter. So what is that Sarva Dharman? So he's saying all these paths, whatever we have discussed about Karma Yoga, Nishkam Karma Yoga, Karma Kand, Gyan Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, forget everything. Sarva Dharman, just act for me. I'll take care of everything. So definitely the path of bhakti is the safest, quickest. That is what Krishna wants. Yet if someone is insistent, no, I cannot do that. I do not follow that. Krishna says, okay, there's something for you also. You take this path. And but that is what I'm saying. But Srila Prabhupada's beauty is, even in the 2nd chapter and the 3rd chapter, he's translating Nishkama Karma Yoga as Krishna consciousness. He knows the heart of Krishna. He knows that in all other editions of Bhagavad Gita, how how, what mess the commentators have created, how it has been misinterpreted in so many various ways. He doesn't want any new reader or any experienced reader to be diverted by any other path. Therefore, he's translating it here as Krishna consciousness. Right. So yes, you're right. It can take many lifetimes and one can stay stuck at a certain point of time. That's the individual journey of the soul in Krishna based upon their own desires and what do they want in life. But we'll see Krishna will reveal one's heart, not once, not twice, but in each chapter, he gives the hint of bhakti. Even in the chapter of Karma Yoga and in the chapters of Jnana Yoga, he again brings up the point of bhakti. In the second chapter, we saw how he said mat para. And in third chapter also, we'll see in further verses. He'll give his own example and then towards the last. Okay. Yes. Ananita Mataji.
Hi Krishna Prabhuji, my question seems to be very stupid, but I often think that we bring so many items like I order grocery. In grocery, there are so many items which cannot be cooked or offered to Krishna, right? There may be some toiletry items. There are shoes we are bringing. Clothes, obviously, we can offer to Krishna. We can offer food to Krishna. We can use appliances for the service of Krishna. But there's so many things that which cannot be offered directly or indirectly. How should we understand that? That everything should be offered to Krishna.
So yes, if we are not on the level that we can see everything as spirit, so we cannot offer everything to Krishna, and that distinction must be made. In Canto 1 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada gives the story of a Brahmana who comes to Sanatan Goswami to beg the highest benediction. And Sanatan Goswami, okay, it is near the garbage, he takes that touchstone. And he takes that touchstone, he's very happy. And on the way, he thinks, why Sanatan Goswami kept, if it is the most valuable thing, why he's keeping it in the dustbin? And he again goes back, and Sanatan Goswami says, you want something higher? First of all, go and throw this touchstone. Now he could easily have shown, let us make a lot of money and let us use it for Krishna service. Why he asked that Brahmana to throw the touchstone first? Or why he was not using the touchstone and offering it to Krishna? And Srila Prabhupada writes, to establish that example, that until and unless one sees everything in spirit, a distinction between matter and spirit must be made. So it depends upon the qualification of a person, on the adhikar of that person. Can they engage everything in Krishna? An Uttam Adhikari can. They can. Prabhupada says, if a drunkard even thinks while drinking wine, the taste of wine is Krishna, he'll make advancement. But does it mean that are we offering wine to Krishna? No, it doesn't mean that. So that there are certain things which are not to be used in service of Krishna. And we make that distinction. But if a person has that adhikar, he can see that their relationship of that object with Krishna, and they can utilize it in his service. So then we can do that by taking shelter and guidance from such a person, not independently.
Like like you mentioned that Uttamadhikari can use everything and can see also that this can be used for Krishna. Like I a very neophyte sadhak, if I gift something to a Vaishnava or to my Guru Maharaj, whoever, then I can think that yes, I'm giving this for the Vaishnava service, so it is Krishna's. But for us, this is not possible.
Yes, but to talk about anything, he sees everyone to be fully Krishna conscious. And He sees everyone is engaged in the service of Krishna, and it is only me who's not serving Krishna. That is his vision. So anasaktasya vishayan yatha arham upayunjita. So first qualification is anasaktasya vishayan. I myself has to be anasakt. And yata nirbandhe Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. So I have to see there's sambandha with Krishna. So I have to be anasakt. That's the first qualification. I myself is anasakt, detached from that sense object, from that vishaya. Yatarham upayunjita. And accordingly, I utilize it in service of Krishna by seeing nirbandhe Krishna sambandhe. That is the perfect state of renunciation. And as a neophyte, if I cannot do that, therefore I can take the guidance of someone who can make that distinction, who can see that relationship with Krishna.
So what is the practical advice of you, if I'm asking, and I'm asking on behalf of, I don't know, it is a question of all, but it is a question of mine, and I often think.
So the practical advice are twofold. One is simple living and high thinking. We can, our intention and commitment can be to simplify our lifestyle as much as possible. It saves a lot of our energy. It saves a lot of anxiety. It saves a lot of time. So that is the first practical advice. And secondly, gradually I can introspect in my own life. If I have a habit of doing a lot of shopping, so am I doing it a lot of shopping because I actually need those things for my family members or in service, or am I doing shopping just to overcome some anxiety or just to have a good gala time? So I can accordingly see. And because the definition of simplicity will be different for different individuals. The standards of simplicity based upon different individuals' needs and their own psychophysical nature would be very different. So we'll have to see within your own life. And specifically after spending so much time in our body, we know, we are aware of certain patterns in our life, and we can retrospect again and again if a certain pattern is repeating. So what is going on there? For example, there are certain individuals who have to go to certain yatra, and they always have that kind of how do we say, anxiety. I may need something in that yatra. Let me carry it in that yatra. So, and that is how the luggage keeps on increasing and increasing. I may need this also, and I may need that also, and that may also be needed. So let me carry everything in that yatra. Right? So one has to see. And so I'm giving an example of pattern. And when that yatra happens, they know that 90% of the weight they are carrying is simply, extra. They never utilize those weight. There are certain devotees who think, okay, we are going to yatra, let me take this book. I will read this book. And okay, but let me take that book also, and this book also. And they carry 5-6 books, and they read none of those books. And they bring those books as it is back to their home place. And then this pattern is repeated 6 times, 7 times, 10 times. And then they know, okay, although I'm thinking big, I will read 5 books, 6 books. Let me start with 1 book. So I'm saying, I mean, different individuals have different patterns in their life. I'm just giving a very raw example. So you'll have to see what's going on in that. Okay, we'll take a last question. Mukund Priya Padma Mataji, then we'll close for the day.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji Danvatana. Prabhuji, I couldn't understand the answer of Sanatan Goswami related story which you have told. कि वो touchstone दे दिया तो why he has not used it for Krishna service. He can make lots of money out of that. So what was the answer? I couldn't understand.
Srila Prabhupada writes in the same purport, Sanatan Goswami, through this pastime, he's teaching everyone that until and unless one comes to the level of topmost stage, one must differentiate between matter and spirit. Let me see if I can find out.
Prabhuji, what is the difference between matter and spirit? What do you mean by that?
If I am not able to see a particular object that I want to employ in service of Krishna as spirit, so I must differentiate that this is matter and I'm not supposed to be attached with the matter. Let me see if I can find out. We can read the exact line. Yeah, this is see, read this line. Mataji, if you can read it loud.
Prabhuji, I'm connecting from my phone. So.
Okay. So let me read it. This specific example is given for the neophyte devotees just to convince them that material hankerings and spiritual advancement go ill together. Unless one is able to see everything as spiritual in relation with the Supreme Lord, one must always distinguish between spirit and matter. A spiritual master like Srila Sanatan Goswami, although personally able to see everything as spiritual, set this example for us only because we have no such spiritual vision. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, verse 27. Read that purport. And if you still have any doubt, we'll surely take it up tomorrow. Okay.
Can you please tell me the number again?
1:8:27.
Okay. So, Prabhuji, इसका meaning तो यही हुआ ना, मतलब he can see Krishna in everything. That's why. उनको
the crux is that material vision and spiritual advancement. Material hankering and spiritual advancement doesn't go well together. They go ill. They are,
yes.
Yeah. So that touchstone, if it is for my material hankering, that will not help in the spiritual advancement of life, because internally I'm materially attached to that. So this example is being said by Srila Sanatan Goswami, that one who doesn't have a spiritual vision, that they can see everything in relationship with Krishna, till the time one has that spiritual vision, they must differentiate what is helpful for my life and what is harmful for my life, my spiritual life. We must differentiate. It is not that blindly I can engage anything and everything in service of Krishna. It needs the adhikar. What is that adhikar? I should be able to see the relationship of Krishna and that particular object. Actually.
Okay.
Are you clear?
But
Yes,
probably यहाँ पर Sanatan Goswami has also rejected that item, right?
Yeah, because he's teaching, he's setting an example.
Okay, Prabhuji, that is clear for that particular example. At that time, he wants to tell that even the touchstone is waste in front of the spiritual life and the pleasure which he is getting from that. That person in the story can get from the spiritual life. लेकिन how is applicable for the गृहस्थास? So I was thinking like अगर मुझे touchstone मिल जाए तो मैं क्या करूंगी? So
Yes. So ये तो जब actually में मिलेगा तभी पता लगेगा.
तो हमारे जैसे लोग
So
क्या कृष्णा
sometimes
की
see, there's a very simple answer to it. Many times devotees think, oh, if I get so much holidays, I will read this, I will read that, and I will chant so much. But when the actual holiday comes suddenly, usually the most of the time is spent in taking rest or in talking, socializing, or just watching some internet stuff, right?
मेरे साथ
Not with everyone, but I'm saying just as an example. So
no, Prabhuji, you are. I think Krishna wants you to say it to me because मेरे साथ हर weekend पे यही होता है.
I mean, saying if I get touchstone and I will serve Krishna with unlimited money and I'll spread Krishna consciousness, this and that. But when actually the touchstone comes, then we'll see how much we are able to utilize it. The story comes in Krishna book when Akrura was involved in the conspiracy and he gets the Shamantak jewel. And then, although ideally he was supposed to give that Shamantak jewel to Krishna, but a devotee of the stature of Akrura, he hesitated. He could not give that Shamantak jewel. So suddenly I may think I will do this and that, but let us say you suddenly get an increment, you get the bonus of 10 lakh rupees. Will I actually donate complete money to ISKCON Rohini temple construction, or will I think, okay, let me 50%, let me keep it for myself, 50% for me. That's what I'm saying. So if that complete spiritual vision is there, everything for Krishna, no problem. But till the time that happens, we should differentiate whether I can really engage it in service of Krishna or not. Anyway, I think the time is up. We'll have more conversation if there are more doubts around it tomorrow. Thank you. Please come after reading the remaining purports. Thank you. Granth Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.